Hello, beauties. Welcome back to the vlog. This week we are talking about advocacy and how to be an advocate for others as well as how to advocate for yourself. We're telling stories from my career and the careers of my colleagues this week. And today I really wanted to talk about how to be an advocate and how to self advocate. Many years ago I read a book called Women Don't Ask, and there's a lot of things that are no longer that are a bit out of date in that book now, but one of the things that I think is really interesting is that women a lot of times don't advocate for themselves. We don't ask for a raise, we don't ask for time off, we don't ask for help, we don't ask for the things we need. That's not true for everybody, but I think that that does happen sometimes, and there's a lot of reasons for that we're not going to go into today, but it is something to consider. Is why do we not ask, and have you asked for help? One of the things that came out in one of the comments, I think it was yesterday or the day before, is, what is advocacy and how do you ask someone to advocate on your behalf, right? I think that it really starts with listening, and it starts with being respectful. So if you're someone who has said, let me advocate on your behalf, would you accept me helping you? Maybe you're volunteering. And this is happening a lot right now across our country where people are saying, how do I help? How do I support you? How do I show that I care about you? First, it starts with listening. Action without listening is not advocacy, right? You're presuming something and you just begin and you act, right? That fits our story yesterday. Good intentions, but maybe doesn't meet the needs of whomever you are trying to support. So it starts with respect, it starts with asking questions and listening. Another thing is to be inclusive. Whatever you're doing, if you're going to advocate, may have an impact on more than the one person you're talking with. It might impact a group or a department or a team within your company or organization. So you really want to be an advocate for something that impacts many people, and to be aware of what the impact will be. There's one here, and this might be controversial. But I'm reminded of an advertising campaign that I saw when I was in New York. My little sister used to live in Manhattan. She lived back there for about 10 years. Now she's back on the West Coast. But there was a campaign in the subways about people taking up too much space. As you can imagine, there's a lot of people in the city of Manhattan and in New York, and the subways are very crowded at peak times, and if you sit and spread out and put all your stuff everywhere, you take up a lot of room. Well, they coined a name for this. I'm not going to repeat it because I think it's I didn't fully agree with the approach of the advertising campaign, but I understand the point, and that is that certain people feel like they have a right to take up space, and so they do. And they put all their stuff down and they spread out and their legs are out in the middle of the aisle and they just really feel like they can own that space. And then there are other people, many times women, who don't feel like they can take up space. Like I mentioned yesterday, where you make yourself small, you hold everything in your lap, you want to make sure you're not taking up too much room, you don't lift your voice, right? That we're afraid to take up space. But you have a right to have space. You have a right to sit in a place or stand in a room or be at a boardroom table or talk to a legislator or, lead a meeting. You're allowed to have that space. And advocating for yourself in that space might just look like saying, it might sound like, I just really want some space. I'm going to stand here and this is my space. But it can be a little bit scary and intimidating. Speaking to common values, so this is another area where you can really help on the advocacy front, and that is that when there's an issue, if we talk about all of the things that are wrong, all of the negativity around it, people go into a defensive stance, right? Imagine how you would want to be approached. Once it comes to empathy, if you want someone to advocate for you, or you want to advocate on someone's behalf, you want to look at what you have in common. What's the common ground? Do you have a common cause or common values? Not the things that divide you, but the things that bring you together. And you start there, and it could be as simple as something like you both like tea in the afternoon. It doesn't have to be a big thing. You have to find some commonality so you have a place to begin. That's really important. Understanding the cost involved. If you're going to advocate for something that has sweeping structural change or that might mean there's gaps in the structure of your company. Understanding what those costs are will help people advocate for you as well, because you'll know that it's something that can be followed through on. It's one thing to rally a group and say, okay, we're going to go do a thing and we're so excited about this new idea in our business. If there's no fund for it, or if there's no buy-in by other managers, that's not advocacy either, because it doesn't go anywhere, right? Really telling the story of what matters, supporting the person to say, this person really has value and they have worth and I respect them and I want to hear them. Just those simple words make a difference. And sometimes that's privately, sometimes that's in a small group, and sometimes that's in a public space. But come back to respect and make sure that you've talked about that with the person so they know what to expect too. And then the biggest thing here is that the first time someone advocates for you, or that you're an advocate for someone else, it might not go well. It might fail. It might be rejected. The people you're talking to might dismiss what you're saying as being invalid. And it's part of a process. So don't lose hope that your work isn't going to have an impact, that your voice for someone else isn't going to have an impact, because in the long run it does. You're modeling behavior for others in an organization, or where you're volunteering, or in a company. So that's our topic for today, talking about how to be an advocate. Tomorrow we're going to talk more. Tomorrow's Thank You Thursday. But we're also going to talk more about these stories of advocacy. And we really appreciate you being here and watching, and all of your questions and comments. We'll see you tomorrow.